Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Love Hour podcast. I am your host, MrsKevOnStage. I have not had coffee today, so I will be calm. I've been drinking water.
She's 6 days clean off of McDonald's Frappuccinos.
Nestle, reach out though, okay? We are back with another episode. This will be the first episode in a series in which we are talking about fertility, infertility, and the I've even in my book club, I've called it the silent pain associated with going to the journey of fertility and infertility. And if I'm being 110% honest, this is an area that I am pretty ignorant in. And
Me too, so I'm gonna be very quiet. I learned myself, shut your mouth when you don't know what you're talking about.
Well, that's what I will be doing as well. We did the For Women Only series back in October. If you haven't checked that out, most definitely you absolutely should check that out, where we had 3 or 4 Black OBGYNs come in or gynecologists come in, and they educated us about the women's body. Okay. Like they were here and giving us all the information that we didn't know. And it was really, really great. And one of the last gynecologists that I talked to, Dr. Jessica Shepard, came on, and she was talking about fibroids and PCOS and just a lot of things, and how those, some of the issues that I was even unfamiliar with can impact fertility. And it was at that moment that I was like, I need to do a fertility infertility series. And I kind of sat on it and didn't do anything. And one of my favorite YouTubers of all time, she is absolutely one of my favorite YouTubers of all time. Her name is Desi Perkins. And she just, have you heard of her story? I'm going to introduce you. I'm doing all of this to introduce you. But she is absolutely one of my favorite YouTubers. And she has, over the course of the years that she's been on YouTube, dropped hints and more vocally, or lately more vocal, about her infertility journey. And she started releasing some of the footage. And when I tell you I was in full-blown tears, listen.
I came downstairs and Melissa was crying at in the kitchen island eating cereal. I was like, "Are you okay?" She was like, "Desi's pregnant." And I was like, "The YouTuber you follow?" She was like, "I've been invested for a long time."
It was like episode 3 or 4 where she actually announced that
pregnancy
and it was
video.
It was so beautiful,
it was so
really well
precious.
done. And listen, my heart, my emotions, everything is just completely wrapped up into this story. And I was like, I need to do this. After watching her journey and just seeing so much that I just am unaware, I was like, I need to do this. Then couple that with, I have a book club, shout out to the Booze, and we were reading this book. And in the book, they touched on infertility. And I was like, girl, if this ain't a sign from the Lord himself that you need to do this, you need to do this. And so I immediately reached out on my social media and was asking people for experts to bring on, guests to bring on, because I wanted to hear real people's stories as well. And Dr. Stevon Lewis is an MFT that we had on the podcast, an absolute fave, recommended Dr. Loree Johnson. And I was like, if she's good with him, she's good with me. So I started following her, reached out to her, and now she is a guest on the podcast. All of that was to introduce you. Thank you so much, Dr. Loree Johnson, for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited that you are addressing this topic, and I'm really excited to be here, not just as a professional, but also as a member of the infertility community. So just looking forward to sharing whatever I know.
One of the reasons that I was like immediately like, yes, this is something I must do, is because while I will have, and I do have, I'm not quite sure what infertility doctors are called, but they're like like almost experts in the field. I'm not quite sure if there's an actual like gynecologist term.
There is. They're called REIs, and or reproductive endocrinologists is one term as well, or REI stands for reproductive endocrinology and infertility. So definitely someone who is a GYN who has a subspecialty in infertility issues.
Got it. Okay, got it. So I do have two REIs coming on the podcast later this month. And then I have two people that will be sharing their story. Two people that will be sharing their story as well. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting about Dr. Loree is that she's on the mental health side. So in addition to hearing actual people's story, understanding what's going on in the body, it's important for us to recognize what's going on in our mind as well. And I don't think that's something that people often think about as they're going through this journey. And especially when I have Rachel on next week, you'll definitely be able to see the importance of making sure you're taking care of your mental health as you're going through this as well. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think this is going to be a really great conversation. So I guess just to kind of get started, you mentioned that you are also a part of the infertility community, I believe is what you said. So if you want to give us a little bit of your background and then a little bit of your story as well.
Absolutely. So I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and coach. So I've been in the field for over 20 years. And when I started, I was probably working mainly with kids and their families, and then transitioned to private practice, where I started working more with professional women. And so you can't work with women and not deal with reproductive issues and women's mental health. And so that was before my own journey, but I'd already started to hear stories of women being concerned about their fertility late in life. There's no secret that women are waiting later to couple, or people in general are waiting later to couple, which means that people are waiting later to start their families. And so when you don't know where you stand in terms of fertility, you've never been pregnant before, and you don't know much about your hormonal kind of system, there are women who just really didn't know a lot about their cycles from a biological standpoint, and then dealing with the emotional fallout from that, because it's like, wow, now I'm 38 and I don't know what this means, and I'm feeling this anxiety. And when you're trying to process this wealth of medical information, anxiety levels go up. And so that's what I started to kind of deal with primarily. And then what started to happen was, I got married later in life, and then never been pregnant, decided to, we were, married 6 months. It's like, okay, well, we should go ahead and try. And that started my own journey of, getting pregnant and then losing my pregnancies. And so I probably got pregnant 4 times within about 4 years, and lost, all of those pregnancies, and went through a 1.5 years of infertility treatments as well. And so it's a grind. It's grueling. And a lot of what impacted how I work today was my experience of going through this as a therapist, and knowing that, I remember going into the consultations the consultation with the REI, and there was really no attention paid to, the emotional health. It was just, I got a lot of medical information. And so once you find out, all right, this is your kind of diagnosis, and you go through a series of blood tests and ultrasounds and other diagnostic procedures to kind of lead you to your kind of treatment plan, so to speak. And so there's the overwhelming information that you are kind of processing. And then, like I said, this mental health component that is just like, I can't even wrap my brain around all of this. Right. You're telling me I have to start taking all of these medications, and I'm going to have to do what, and you're going to, poke me here, and all of that. So that is, it's draining. And one of the things that we started to see, and, I noticed just as a mental health professional, is just, the doctors are great about the science. But one of the things I'd wished at very early on was that, they would say, you need to make sure that you're connected to a support group, or, make sure you're in your own therapy. And because I was a therapist, I was able to piece that together myself. But I also started to see more women who weren't getting those directives. And so, it became this kind of scramble to make sure that they had all of the emotional support that they needed to go along with that, and normalizing their experience of, anxiety or depression, or just, maybe just paralysis because of just the sheer volume of what they were going through. And, and the infertility world can be very frenzied in and of itself. It's a beautiful thing in terms of, the science that's there to help us grow our families. And it's not something that anybody really prepares for. So, getting over the initial shock and loss of even having to do that is one thing. And then when you're in it and going through it, then that's a whole different kind of story. So that really kind of impacted how I wanted to work with this community in particular, because it's something, there's like this code of silence in the Black community in particular around mental health, issues that I think is definitely shifting. But the silence around infertility issues is still there. And so that's another reason why I'm really glad that you're having a series about that, because we need to be talking about this, because it impacts us, far more than our white counterparts. And that's something that, I don't think a lot of us even knew about. So.
Why does everything impact Black people more than white counterparts? Literally everything impacts us. Do you know why that is? Is it because of like similar reasons to COVID, like less access to resources and things like that?
I think it's less access to resources. I'm also going to call it, what I see is I think there's some underlying kind of racism that, in terms of, like how we are, just how we feel about interfacing with the medical community in and of itself. You have, very early on in my journey, and I hope it's okay to talk a little bit more about my personal journey, because it definitely impacts, how I work. But, I have fibroids. I've had them since my mid-20s, and I was misdiagnosed because my doctor had an assumption about me. She diagnosed me with pelvic inflammatory disease, even though I told her I had one sexual partner, and not many. And, no offense to, if you have multiple sexual partners, it was just one of those things where the diagnosis didn't necessarily fit my presentation. And so one of the things that we see too in the data is you have a lot more Black women who haven't been diagnosed properly, because they assume that it's something else as opposed to to what it is. And so that level of stress and what we're starting to see in some of the data that's coming out, and I'm sure your REIs will probably talk to this a little bit more intelligently than I can, but they're coming around to looking at the fact that, the numbers are different. We might have, so for in IVF in particular, Black women actually might make more embryos than their white counterparts, but they have less success in outcomes in terms of it leading to a pregnancy. So when you control for certain factors, like economics and age and weight and all of the kind of major factors, these issues around race continue to kind of rise and let us know that there's some disparities here. There's some disparities. So it's access, it's knowledge. It's also finding somebody who looks like you and who really understands who you are culturally and how that might be, and how you might be presenting medically. And so then when you also kind of weave in the mental health portion of that too, having a mental health professional or coach just to really hold that space for you around these issues becomes even more kind of paramount. And those are things that we just haven't been kind of done for the most part.
Wow, that's really good, and kind of a lot of information to take in, especially when you think about there's so many things that impact people of color, and very specifically Black people in America, that we have to be more diligent about in order to make sure that we can advocate for ourselves. And we don't always know. We go into the doctor and you just kind of trust what the doctor tells you, and you don't realize how much bias goes into how they're treating you, how they're diagnosing you. You just kind of, this is science
Pain
and it's
tolerance.
medical, right? All of that kind of goes, and you don't think about those things on the surface.
You don't. And, and as someone who suffered from fibroids and also suffered from endometriosis, and you'll see this a lot with women who do suffer from endo, is that there feels like a sense of like gaslighting, because there's a lot of invisible pain, so to speak. And, and so when I was diagnosed with fibroids for the first time, she kept saying, no, it's PID, it's pelvic inflammatory disease. And I'm like, and come find out I have, a grapefruit size and a lemon size fibroid literally growing out of my uterus that you couldn't necessarily feel when, they do their exams. So, it just leaves you feeling like, just not seen and taken seriously. And therefore, you need to kind of advocate for yourself. But it's hard to know how you need to advocate when you don't really have the information too, and you're piecing it together. So I'm glad that we're talking about this.
Oh, so good. We want to take a break here to hear a word from our sponsors.
Summer's in full action, and we're thankful for our sponsor today, Manscaped, for keeping us fresh. Sun's out, bum's out, and hopefully your pubes are not out. Manscaped offers all the right tools to keep your hair groomed above and below the belt. Let me tell you what, not only do I shave my ball sack, I also put ball sack deodorant on it, and my balls have been thanking me. I wake up in the morning and my balls are like, hey, man, you know that Outkast song we like? So fresh and so clean, clean. Dun, 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 dun. My balls are fresh and clean. I gave them a haircut. I wiped them down, wet them, cleaned them, and put ball deodorant on them. Oh, yeah. Everybody likes them. Listen, everybody. Manscaped is dedicated to helping you level up your full body grooming game. They actually just released their Shears 2.0 nail kit, which is perfect to add on to their Lawn Mower 3.0 perfect package. No one likes ungroomed set of feet, fingers, and most importantly, balls. That's why they have forever changed the grooming game with their Perfect Package 3.0. The Perfect Package 3.0 kit comes with Essential Lawnmower 3.0 water-resistant cordless body trimmer and a ton of other liquid formulations to round out your manscaping routine. Some of that liquid is ball deodorant. It actually comes in liquid form. And my balls still smell good. This is the best trimmer on the market for those of you in need of a chest shave or a ball cleanup. The third generation trimmer features skin-safe technology to reduce manscaping accidents. Get 20% off with free shipping with the code LOVEHOUR.
Love Hour
at manscaped.com. Do yourself a favor and always use the right tools for the job. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code LOVEHOUR at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use the code LOVEHOUR.
Love Hour.
Summer is here. It's time to manscape your ball sack.
Okay, so let's talk about, first of all, really great baseline. Even just in that, I think if you're listening to this and you're kind of on your own journey, number one, advocate for yourself. Number two, find somebody that look like you. Find somebody that looks like you and can understand you and will actually listen to you.
You know, it's interesting. I was talking to Joy. She was a Black doctor, and she was saying, even if it's a Black person, like, never feel ashamed to ask for a second opinion. Like, we feel like we have to
get
take
a second opinion.
You can get a second opinion, third opinion.
Right.
It's your, she was saying it's your body, and you don't have to take the first thing because, you know, doctors are people, right? But they are doing their diagnosis, but someone else might see it differently. And a lot of times, you know, Dr. Loree was saying, we have some mistrust with the medical community. And you can also just take people's word point blank and accept that. So I think there's a lot of things in our life that we don't have to take as rule and law the first time just because somebody says it. Because you can be misdiagnosed in a lot of ways. Absolutely. And then you are the one who ends up being the recipient of more pain and harm. And the doctor's like, oh, you know, my bad. Shoot, you should have said something. You're like, but I told you the first time. And
it affects us. I'm going to get to you really. I have a very specific question that'll keep the conversation going, but I just kind of want to like land on this point because we're making it that this is not just in the medical field. I just posted this actually on Instagram today, even about children, Black children being sent to the principal and being diagnosed with ADHD and ADD and all of these things. And that's not the case. And so even then being an advocate for your child and not just, you know, taking whatever the teachers or whatever, it's, you know, your child is bad, they're misbehaving, they're this,
and Karen's
they're that.
Working in the school district too.
Exactly. So all of that goes to making sure that we are advocating for ourselves. Okay, so now that we're there, I want to talk about what, as you went through your journey and now you've become a professional coach and a therapist in this field, what are some things that you would recommend couples do if they're going through this journey?
So I think that first and foremost, support is key, and don't lose sight of what made you a couple to begin with. It is so easy once you take the first step towards treatment. And I want to be really clear, because pursuing fertility treatment does not always equal IVF. It becomes synonymous with that because that's what we know the most. But it could
IVF. Could you explain IVF and
is that in vitro?
Yeah,
in vitro fertilization?
and IUI.
Yes. So we have intrauterine insemination, which is IUI, and which means that they take the partner's sperm and they physically inject it into the woman at a certain point of her cycle when she's, at point of ovulation. And so the thought is that you're kind of helping give the sperm a kind of a head start, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And there are certain cases where that is indicated. And even before you get to an IUI, they do what we call like medicated cycles, where you would just take medications to help boost your ovulation, just depending on what your issue is.
Now, when you say boost your ovulation, what does that mean?
So what that means is because it's one of the more common issues that affects infertility or fertility is women might not ovulate. They might not know when they ovulate, or they might not ovulate at all. So the medication is there, and typically it's Clomid, which is to kind of give give the body a little bit of a boost to help with that. And then the idea is that you're just kind of supporting the system and doing what it already can do. So does that mean?
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to understand. When you say ovulate, that means they don't produce an egg during each cycle, or they're not having a cycle?
Well, they could be having a cycle, but it just means that they might not be releasing the egg.
Okay,
and
got
because
it.
Ovulating, it means you're releasing an egg to be ready to meet the sperm.
Got it.
So, and that's one of the issues around fertility, obviously ovulation issues, fibroids, endometriosis, things like that. So, regardless of what your treatment plan is as a couple, it's so easy to get kind of swept up into doctor's appointments, schedules around taking medications that, it can be a lot to manage with your regular kind of schedule. So I just really advise my couples to make sure that they're having their date time, to literally put that on the calendar. Don't necessarily expect the same level of spontaneity that you might have enjoyed before. It's okay to have something on your calendar to look forward to, because again, when you're fielding so much information, that can be very overwhelming. People tend to get a little tired, or just a little like disorganized or anxious, and just not themselves. So making sure that you're doing things that that bring you joy, that are the things that that make you a couple. So go out to dinner with friends. Don't talk about your fertility issues if you don't need to, or talk about them if you need to. You get to decide that for yourself. But don't stop being a couple. And I think that's one of the things that can be, I think, hardest for the couples that I deal with.
I think that's really a really key point, because I can imagine the process almost bringing a separator, because it brings so much stress.
Listen, man, that stress, even during this pandemic, I've been more aware of stress factors on your marriage, even ones that are not necessarily caused by you, can have that same effect. So, both of you wanting kids, or maybe one wanting one more than the other and not feeling like we're aligned. So maybe you're not in this with me. Right. And then just the loss of maybe a failed attempt. Like, I could see you being so discouraged, overall. And then to add to that, it's, society saying, you've got to do this. You know what I mean? It's just more and more stuff you have to think about, that I can imagine you just being like, man, there's so much to deal with. This, I feel like you would need therapy just to go through this process. You know what I mean?
And that's why we're really promoting that even more, because, when you mention the word loss, it is a grieving process. To even go to see an REI, it means admitting that, things aren't happening naturally. And you have to mourn the loss of the fact that, you're not going to have a child the same way that your friends and family, And so, and one of the things too, is it's a constant grieving process that doesn't stop. Even if you are making the decision under the best of circumstances, when you are, and there's certain points where, if you're at IVF, which is, in vitro fertilization, where you might have, you're doing the egg retrieval, which is another kind of loss for women. But, there's also this weird kind of piece around excitement. And then you're doing the transfer. And, there are different ways that men and women or, the couple kind of respond to this along the way. And so, there's this excitement, but then also this loss that they're kind of mourning. So I think kind of learning to hold that, hold the two, and knowing that, you might not be on the same page at the same time, and that's too. And the thing is, the majority of fertility treatments are happening to the woman's body, even if there might be male factor issues, as we call it, and that becomes another dynamic that couples have to, kind of contend with, and if one person wants to continue with treatment or the other person wants to take a break, it's like, there's really a lot of support that needs to be in place, to kind of normalize that, and to help remind couples that, even though you're having different reactions, you still are on the same team, and how can you continue to operate that way?
Okay, so you just had like 3 points that I'm gonna try to remember.
Hit 1, 2, 3.
Yeah,
we didn't have no chance to take the punches.
I kind of want to flush them out because I feel like it might be helpful for people. So point number 1 that I wanted to flush out is, well, let's start with the heavy hitter because I don't want to forget it. What advice do you have for the men out there that are what did you call it? The contributing factor?
Yes. So we have, when we think about, fertility, we talk about male factor or female factor.
Okay.
And yes. So is it the female? Is it the male? Or it could be both, actually. Okay.
So can we talk about when it's the male is the factor, and his, like, what things that we can offer, the wife maybe can offer to support, or maybe the man can offer to the woman in support of her, because regardless of who is the factor, primarily the woman is going through the treatments and getting the whatever it is. So can we talk about those dynamics and what couples are going through, and maybe offer some skills that they can kind of use to go through the process?
Well, I think some of the advice that I got really early on that I've kind of passed on is the majority of treatments are happening to the woman and, her body. So she is usually going through the more invasive tests at the very beginning. And usually the testing for the men is they, ejaculate into a cup. And so it's not invasive. It might be a little embarrassing because you're having to go to a doctor's office, which brings up a whole host of, kind of issues about, can I even do this in a doctor's office? And I'm not in a space that I feel safe. But comparatively speaking, I think that, having some recognition to the fact that, one person is going to feel this differently. And so I think for men to, the male partners to be really sensitive to the fact that, the women are going to be taking the hormones. And, we know when you start, kind of adding additional hormones into the picture that can, their mood changes, their skin changes, and other bodily changes. Your body is literally going through a lot of, of stuff at the same time. And so again, depending on what the male issue is, and some male factor issues can be improved with just lifestyle issues. So, the way that I think a woman can support, her partner is, those changes could happen together. And, let's make this a team effort where, it's not just you having to make a lifestyle change. We're just going to make it as a couple. And therefore it's not something that it's his issue or it's her issue. It's like, okay, this is our issue. So, and I think it's just being open to, ways that your partner might want support that you might not even be aware of. And just being open to that. I mean, anything goes at this point. And I just like to help couples notice, kind of really honor, just because of what's worked for one couple doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you. So what's working for you, and let's do that. So.
Somebody in the comments on Patreon said something that I feel like is so a thing I hadn't thought about. Even you touched on this a little bit earlier about going to a doctor and realizing that you might not be able to get pregnant the way other people do. That in and of itself, the term they used was broken. Like, I feel like I'm broken if I'm, you're taught this is how the human body is supposed to work. And for whatever reason, it's not working like that for me. And I can, even just that, before you even go to the doctor or anything like that, even before you realize you might have an issue, it's just like, man, we've been trying for a while. I haven't even had that. What's wrong with me?
Right.
Like even just what's wrong with me is a hard question to sit with. Like, why am I not doing what? And then, then you add to maybe other people, or it seems easy for people to get pregnant without, doctors. And then other people who go through fertility, like, it's kind of like, I have a friend of mine who's a YouTuber, a man. It's kind of a little aside, but I've seen this happen to him a lot of time. He has really bad acne, and he's had it for all his life. And every time he talks about it publicly, people always respond with drink more water, cut out dairy, do this. And he's like, if you guys don't think I have already tried that, if you think it was as easy as drinking water and cutting out dairy, and I didn't try that, but people think they're helping by saying, oh yeah, a friend of mine just cut out dairy. Yeah, maybe that works for some people, but maybe other people it doesn't work. Right. And it's not entirely helpful to suggest something when you don't know what you're talking about and it doesn't work. And to think, maybe you think I haven't tried that? Right. I'm 30 years old. You think I haven't tried to cut out dairy? Exactly. And that's just somebody's skin. Right. Now taking that further to, having a baby, I would be in a low constant state of rage. You know what I mean?
And you know what, to piggyback on that though, because I think that exists too, because I can't tell you how many times, couples get the questions more than the men do about like, when are you having kids, and that's a whole other kind of conversation. But if I hear, just relax or go on vacation, one more time, that's not helpful, to the couples.
Go on vacation. People say that?
Or it'll happen when you stop thinking about it.
It'll happen when you stop thinking about it. Or have you thought about adoption? Or, all of those things. And it's like, guaranteed if somebody is walking into an REI's office, they have considered a whole host of...
Boy, I know I would be like, if you don't get out of my face with this.
And some people do get the look. But, the other piece too that I think is so important, and you've touched on this a little bit, or we might have talked about this earlier, but the misconceptions that we have about our own fertility within the community. And I had that myself, this idea that, fertility issues aren't necessarily something that we struggle with. That's something that, that's for white people. And come find out, and this is data that's come out and confirmed within the last, few years, we are, 2 times as likely to have issues with fertility than our white counterparts, but 50% less, willing to, or, like in terms of accessing that, that. So I just think those stereotypes around, fertility are still embedded in our communities, that just make it hard for people to reconcile.
And I think another mistake that I can see is when something hasn't affected you or anyone like you, then you're more likely to say the things that you just said. Yes. Because it's not something you have much experience in. And I can see you falling into those cliched maybe not cliche, but those statements that you just mentioned, thinking you're being helpful, and you really just don't know much of anything, because it's not a thing that's really talked about publicly that often. Frankly, when Melissa set up this series, I was like, should I even be here? And she was like, no, people, there's husbands out there who don't know either, so it's definitely a layered thing. It's not just one thing. There's so much that goes into it.
There is. And I think for the men too, and I do appreciate you being here, and, and I love your, just you all as a couple and how you kind of put yourself out there.
Thank you. We work really hard.
It's beautiful. It gives me chills. I love that. Because it is harder for men, to talk about, just fertility issues. And, I know it was hard for my husband to talk, and he's kind of let me take the lead since it was mainly impacting me, but, just other, couples that I've worked with and where there have been male factors. I mean, there's just been this, a little like this shame that goes along with, wow, I've got issues with my sperm, and, and it's, and somehow that became a reflection of his manhood. And
I could see that a mile away.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
And so we have a medical, like a truly a medical issue that's happening for people. You know, infertility in and of itself is a medical term, you know, and so that means that there's something going on with, you know, your reproductive cycle. And sometimes that can be solved with, you know, with lifestyle changes, but, you know, and sometimes it can, and that's why we've got the beauty of science to help us along the way. But it's recognizing that, you know what, these are things that are out of our control. But what is in our control is how we deal with it and how we approach it. And, you know, and being our advocate, our own best advocate, and gathering the supports where we need to, you know,
You have a very soothing voice.
Yeah.
I feel like I just want to tell you other things in my life. Like, listen, so this is everything is cool. Listen, I've been struggling with my mental. You know, you know what I mean? I just, you're very like Tabitha Brown-esque, soothing about you.
I think that's what therapists have.
Yes, therapists have to have that welcoming, like, it's okay, what's wrong? Like, I was a baby and my dad tripped me and they laughed. You know, it's funny. I'm joking, but when I was a kid, we were playing football with my uncle, and he never visited that much. And on the last play, he said, I'm going to throw it to you, Kev. And I was like, okay. And I was not very fast. Another kid on my team was fast. He threw it to him. That kid scored a touchdown. My uncle was like, I'm done playing. And I never forgave him for that. I was like, you said you were passing it to me. He was like, but we won. I was like, I don't care if we won. I want to catch the ball. And randomly, that memory will pop up in my head. And I'm 37, and he going to throw that ball. I'm about to go in Detroit. I'm going to have a show in Detroit, and we're going to set up a football game, and he going to throw me that ball like he said it was. And I was like, why do you, it's so crazy how you remember random things like that.
It is.
But he really going to have to answer for those crimes.
Okay.
I think on that note, we can take a break here.
Okay.
We want to tell you guys really quickly about Green Chef while we're talking about showing up for anybody in your life that's going through the grieving process or perhaps experiencing infertility. Green Chef is actually a really easy way to show up for your friends, send them a meal so they at least can have that off of their plate. We just had Green Chef. We got hold on, I took a picture of the meal so I don't forget. So hold on. It's like a Philly cheesesteak. It's called a ground beef cheesesteak melt. This is a really kid-friendly meal. It is really, really easy because they pre-package all of the ingredients. They are pre-proportioned, really, really easy to put together. Green Chef is a USDA certified organic company that makes eating well easy and affordable with plans to fit every kind of lifestyle. Green Chef lets you choose from a wide array of easy to follow lifestyles with select organic ingredients. Recipes are quick, and easy with step-by-step instructions, chef tips, and photos. I especially love the photos because they make I'm trying to make my meal look like how your meal is looking. Okay, that's how I know I'm doing it correctly. Enjoy clean ingredients you can trust, seasonally sourced for peak freshness. Recipes include pre-made measured sauces, dressings, and spices so you can get more flavor in less time. Meal plans include paleo, plant-powered, keto, and balanced living. Use code LOVEHOUR80.
LOVEHOUR80?
To get $80 off your first month plus free shipping on your first box. Again, you're going to go to greenchef.com/lovehour80.
LOVEHOUR80.
To redeem and for more details. Use code LOVEHOUR80 to get $80 off your first month plus free shipping on your first box. Go to greenchef.com/lovehour80 to redeem and for more details. All right, and we're back. And so I want to dive a little bit deeper. I know we talked a little bit about the things men can do, or I'm not quite sure we actually really deep dived into that, about like the shame I believe a couple would experience, men would experience, women would experience as they're going through the infertility treatments, and how to make sure that this doesn't cause a divide. Because I would even believe that sex would become a chore because it's all about like timing and the cycle. And now it's all about the reproduction and not about the pleasure of sex. Right. Can we even talk? I mean, I kind of threw a lot of things out there, but can we talk about those things as well?
Absolutely. You know, we can start with the sex piece, because I feel like that is probably the most prevalent, and, you know, what I see too in terms of, you know, couples really needing to find their way back to each other sexually. Because one thing that can happen before you get into the crux of like some of the heavier duty kind of fertility treatments is they will what they call monitor your cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that means is when they start monitoring, they ask you like, when are you starting? And then, you know, when you're getting closer to ovulation, you have to start tracking, and then you have to go into the doctor's office, and then they, you know, look at you, and then they tell you to go home and have sex. So, you know,
it's very scientific.
It is.
You know what I mean? Like, I can imagine it's hard to then get in the mood for like the romantic part of sex as well, when it's very like rigorous.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. And that's where some of the well-meaning advice comes in around, you know, just relax or have fun with it. And it's like, well, you know, it's fine when it's on your own terms, but when it's on somebody else's terms, it changes the dynamic. And, you know, so it can, I think, create this division, because, you know, what happens when you're ovulating and you're in the middle of a fight, and the last thing that you want to do is be intimate with your partner.
And you have the time issue of it, like, but we also need to,
it's
like,
so critical.
I don't like you right now, though.
I don't like you.
If we miss this moment, we might not get another moment till next month.
Right.
Exactly.
Oh, that's a lot.
So when you think about all of that pressure, so again, the mental health piece of it is really, how can we take some of the pressure off, you know, and help couples feel more in control of, you know, what interventions do they even want to take, and what ways can they feel like they have more freedom over their intimacy. Some people, like, that's where the whole date night is helpful, or even going away on trips, just so that they don't have the same associations, you know, being at home. I'm really a big fan of changing the scenery a little bit, because when you start to associate, you know, this is why also, you know, people will change doctor's offices sometimes after they've had a failed result, because that association, that negative association is there.
I see that.
Yeah.
I see that. So, you don't know what you're talking about. It didn't work.
Yeah, exactly. Or, you know what?
But emotionally too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I can associate, now this place is like, this is officially a failed attempt, and your mind, you go back to there, and you're met with the hope of what you had the first time,
right?
And now that hope is, you know, it's you've lost that. I would be like, man,
and that's part of the continued grieving process that goes along with fertility month after month. So every time a woman gets her cycle, you know, it's like a flippin' funeral, because it means that, you know what, you know, the procedure didn't work. And then on top of it, in addition to the emotional investment, you've got the financial investment on top of it. And then you're seeing somebody
and then
else.
You're also just on your period too.
Exactly.
Enough.
Yeah. So that's
oh my gosh.
And, you know, and so, you know, just even, so that piece, it's a lot to kind of help couples take back, you know, power in their sexual relationship. And sometimes that might mean taking a break from treatments, to help them feel just more normal, you know, and then again, you know, just depending on what their styles of grief look like, you know, some are more expressive, you know, and sometimes women are more expressive with their grief than their partners are. And so, you know, I know my husband was always really good about just letting me have my little moments, and, you know, just listening and not fixing, even though he had this look sometimes, and he was just like,
I realize how important that is for me too.
What?
To listen and not fix.
Oh boy, I suck at that.
Yes. And, you know, sometimes I do too, even though it's my job, because, you know, I feel that energy for people. And that's what's happening when people are giving that advice too. You know, it's coming from a loving place. They want this for you. They're trying to be supportive, and they don't know how, and they're trying to find the language. And that's why when we're talking about this, you know, that awareness, I think, helps people connect differently about how to support people, you know, in a more meaningful way.
Can we talk, we touched on it a little bit, but I would really like to talk a little bit about what I'm going to term PTSD in terms of having your cycle, going through that grieving process. And then if I could take it a little step further, the guest that I'm having on next week, even after she would have a positive pregnancy test, there was a little bit of a wall built up for fear of experiencing that loss again. And then even after her daughter was born, there was still a I'm unsure how this is going to go, and I don't want to experience that pain again. So can we talk a little bit? I think it just might be validating for women out there to know that they're normal and they're not, kind of losing it of going through this continual grief process.
Absolutely. It is something that I do diagnose in my practice, post-traumatic stress disorder. And so depending on the length of the fertility journey and, kind of what kind of transpired in terms of, miscarriages or treatments and all of that, that can depend, impact how intense the trauma, registers, but it is traumatic nevertheless. And I define trauma as, an extreme emotional charge that, that really impacts one's sense of emotional functioning. So we will see, pregnancy after loss is a very, there's higher levels of anxiety for sure. And there's no guarantee, just like once you transition into parenthood, that those feelings of, anxiety or hypervigilance around, just there's an angst.
Right.
For lack of a better way of saying it, that's just there, and it impacts the ability to kind of bond, with the child. So the child is here, and it doesn't mean that the anxiety goes away. Right. And so that's where I think therapy can be really helpful in helping to reprocess some of that. Right. And there's actually a trauma modality that I actually went to get trained in to help with that, because trauma resonates in the body. And one of the things that we know with women, in particular in the infertility world, that levels of anxiety or depression will spike around year 2 or 3. And then what we're also seeing is just more instances of traumatic kind of experiences, difficulty in going to the doctor's offices, triggers, you'll hear a lot about triggers that women will have or couples will have, to baby announcements or young children, seeing pictures of children, seeing pregnant women can be triggering. And so the experience is really
Mother's
about
Day.
Mother's Day, Father's Day, any major holiday that is family oriented is another trigger. And so the therapy modality of the EMDR that I do is about reprocessing those experiences to kind of help buffer that a little bit, if they're in the journey. And then afterwards, that's where I think a deeper level of reprocessing can kind of help people.
What's crazy, Dr. Loree and Liz? We're watching, our Patreon's watching live. We got a little bit under 500 people in here. And I'm like peeking at the comments, and so many of the women in just this small section of the audience are talking about what they've dealt with. And that's just the people who are watching live and feel comfortable talking about it, which means like that number amongst our community is so much higher, but it's not something that is talked about kind of publicly at all. There's a couple of friends of ours who we talked about it, but they don't really talk about it publicly because it's a difficult thing. And therefore people, I can see, end up making the same kind of unintended comments that hurt, because you're not as aware of this is an offensive thing, this is a hurtful thing, because you don't talk about it that much. And then maybe somebody had that issue and then they were able to conceive later, and you're like, oh, you guys are pregnant, congratulations. And they're in their head, they're probably like, bro, you don't even know what we had to go through. And then somebody else is dealing with still not getting to that point. And it's a lot just today, and I've seen these fans a lot. And had we have never talked about this, I don't think I would have ever even thought about, the women in our audience who've suffered from this or are continuing to suffer from this.
Yeah. And it brings up the sense of guardedness that you have to, to bring, this sense of protection. I can't allow myself to get too attached to this next pregnancy. And, and I can definitely identify with that. With my second pregnancy, I was just, there was so much anxiety around, am I going to keep this baby? And then when I kind of made it past the first milestone, the first trimester, and you get into the second trimester, you're like, okay, well, maybe I can let my guard down. And then, then there are other things that kind of popped up, and I ended up losing that one. And so it's like each successive loss means, kind of correlates to higher levels of anxiety around, is this going to happen for me? And then when your body is living in this, again, hypervigilant kind of tense state around pregnancy, that's not necessarily conducive to, to being pregnant. So it's a lot. There's a huge assault that ends up happening to your
assault.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so, making sure that you're connected to a community of people that can hold that space for you is key.
Right.
I my tribe, and I still talk to my tribe. And they were there from the very beginning, and they're still here. A lot of us have had various losses along the way. A lot of us have gone on to have children, and a couple of us haven't yet, but still it's that level of support. So please make sure that, if you're going through this, make sure you're going to a place where you feel seen, and that you feel supported, and you can talk about the ugliest thoughts that you might have, that you might not feel comfortable sharing because somebody's like, oh my gosh, but you know what? It's normal.
Yeah.
It's normal.
I want to take a moment to kind of just sit on this moment when you were talking about Mother's Day and as a trigger, or seeing kids or pregnancy announcements or whatever that could possibly be a trigger. I think it's really important for people to know that that's okay if it's a trigger. I think a lot of times you want to put on I'm happy for you. I am. And I'm sure you are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Genuinely happy. But it is that coexisting of I'm happy for you. And this is also a sobering realization of the truth of my situation.
Right.
And that can bring on sadness, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And it's normal for those things to coexist.
Yes.
It's normal for those things to coexist. And I'm going to add to the list of triggering events, baby showers. And because, I should be happy for you. And I, always advise people that you can be happy and, support people from a distance. Because if you are, going to an event and you're, feeling triggered and you're about to cry, that's not necessarily helpful either. So making sure that you have some kind of strategy to deal with that if you are feeling, if you're feeling, triggered. And I call that pivoting, because you just never know when it's going to come up, or just even conversation, just innocent conversation. And then it starts to veer off into talking about other people's children. And you could be thinking you're in a good space, and then all of a sudden it's just like, whoop. And so you just have to really worry, figure that out, and be okay with it, and know that, it's just normal. Your body is having a reaction, and let's go with that as opposed to trying to suppress it.
Yeah, that's so good, to learning to honor however you're feeling in that moment, instead of trying to put on a mask and trying to be, something that you're actually not feeling in the moment. I think that's so key and so important. One of the other things that you talked about in terms of coexisting is this idea of happiness and anxiety. So when you, even going back to, it's egg day, I think is what you called it, or something like that. Yeah. And so this idea of like having excitement that this is a possibility, and then there's also a possibility that this won't happen, and then the same thing of taking the pregnancy test and having your period and having a bit, like all of those things coexisting. I think it would be good to validate those feelings for people that are going through that as well.
It's a very, and I think that's also a theme that I like to, mention in my work with people. It's just, you get really good at validating feelings that don't necessarily go together. So you just learn how to ride that wave, and however you ride it is how you need to do it. And that's okay. So you can feel excitement, and you can feel a little bit, kind of anxious. And so let's focus, where would you like to focus, and draw that attention as best you can, but not beat yourself up because you're struggling with it too. So, it's so individualized. It's so individualized.
So good. I want to see if there were first of all, was there anything that we haven't touched on that you would like to talk about? And I think, if you don't mind, maybe if I have a question from the audience, we can pull it and then ask. Okay. So Patreon, if you have a topic, remember she's mental health, So I can't get too deep into the biology stuff. That will be another guest. Or two other guests actually. But if you have mental health questions, definitely pose them. And then I will give you the floor to kind of just lay out anything that we haven't touched on.
Okay.
For you. Oh, you know what might be good too? If you were talking about the groups that you have, the mental health groups that you have, can you maybe give some resources to people as well as we're thinking of the questions?
Yes. So one, resource that I think is good is Resolve. It is the National Infertility Association, and so that is kind of the big group for helping people in the infertility community. Then there are other, I think, groups on Facebook. There's the Broken Brown Egg. I think she's actually on Instagram, and then there's Black Women in Infertility. But there are a whole host of those are the resources initially that come to mind about the nice go-to places for that. And then there's the IVF Warrior on Instagram.
She's amazing.
Yeah. Yes.
I reached out to her to actually come on, and she recommended somebody. I don't remember who, but yeah, she is IVF Warrior. I started following her, trying to get more adept into this field.
Definitely. And so, because I think that, and also there's the Fertility Tribe is a good one.
I follow them too.
Yep. Let's see. Who else do I follow? I follow a bunch of therapists right now too. So I think it's, I think that's where I would start for some support, and also just encouraging people not to shy away from doing their individual work, and making sure that they find a personal therapist to connect with, because there are, I think, therapy for Black girls or Black female therapists or other two referral sources that would be really good for more specific mental health, issues as well.
Okay, got it. We have one really great question that I want to ask. Can you go back? How do you express to family about your triggers where you aren't sounding bitter or unexcited for family? That's actually a good one for friends or family.
It's a great question. And I think just making sure that your language is rooted in I statements. So, I'm feeling really triggered, or first of all, thank you so much for your concern. I can see that you're really trying to be supportive. One of the things that I find triggering is, and hopefully that they're receptive to that. Most family members or friends are, and if they're not, then I think you might need to take it a little step further and just say, you know what, I'm just not necessarily comfortable talking about this, or I'm feeling triggered, and then you might need to pivot. So just being aware of when your need to pivot is, but also making sure that you're stating what your needs are clearly for whomever you're talking to.
Listen, what you just said is boundaries, ma'am. And I think just in general, we struggle with establishing boundaries. And it almost feels rude saying, hey, I appreciate your concern. I know you're coming from, a place of love, but listen, with a hard but.
I don't think we do good with boundaries at all.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. And so even just in the way you said that, I think that I love modeling, to be honest. I think it's one of the easiest ways for people to learn is to copy and paste. She said this, I like it. I'm going to copy it and use it in my real life. So the idea of saying, thank you. I know this is coming from a place of love, but I'm feeling really triggered right now. I'm going to need to pivot. I'm going to need to leave. I'm going to, I love you. This is great. But I think that type of modeling gives people the opportunity to express their boundaries and have, establish how they're really feeling with their people. And then it just helps us to we need to do better about accepting, acknowledging, and being okay with someone established, honoring folks, their boundaries, folks.
You really need
people's boundaries.
You need to, and don't tell people how they need to feel about certain things, because I think the other thing we struggle with as a community in general is this kind of toxic positivity where, you have to be positive regardless. And when
toxic
you're going
positivity, that's new.
Yes.
I'm actually working on that.
Toxic
I feel like
masculinity I'm familiar with.
Yes.
Well, can you explain what it is a little bit more so people are for sure?
Yeah. So the way I understand toxic positivity or experience it is, it's the sense of being positive without, like by any means necessary. Like
Right.
you always have to focus on a sense of gratitude, or turning whatever negative feeling into a positive one. And in theory, that's a great idea, but not when it undermines your ability to process the negative emotion. So, because what doesn't get honored intensifies. And it's going to come out in some funky ways if you don't do that. So
that was good. What doesn't get honored intensifies.
That part. And so, and this journey will teach you, you need to lean into those ugly thoughts and those ugly feelings in order to, in order to take the power out of them. And so, one example that's coming to my head around toxic positivity, that happens within some of the circles in the fertility world is, oh, you need to be happy for someone, she got pregnant, blah, 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 or what have you. And, meanwhile, someone's struggling with jealousy and anger. And it's like, oh, you shouldn't feel that way. Yeah. No, you get to feel however you need to feel. Don't tell somebody how, do not tell them how they need to feel. Their feelings are their feelings for a reason. And so, and that can happen with friends and family as well. And so again, you kind of, draw that boundary. This is how I'm feeling right now, and I'm going to honor it, and I invite you to as well. And if not, that's on you, but this is what I need to do for me.
And this is why therapy is important, because everyone isn't ready to hear those real emotions that you're feeling. And honestly, everyone shouldn't have the privilege of hearing all of that. You don't have to share that with everyone, but you do need someone, a safe space to get those feelings out and then to work through them so you can find yourself on, the other side. And it'll help you recognize what your triggers are. I can't go there, girl, because that's I already can see. So let me just stay my rump.
Tape forward already.
Yeah, I'm going to just stay at the house. I'm going to send you a little Target gift card. Merry Christmas, happy birthday, all the things. But I got to stay here today.
Exactly.
Happy birthday and Merry Christmas.
Exactly.
Happy everything, but no. Also, but no.
Yeah, I think that's so important and really, really great boundaries. Someone else asked, how do you support a loved one going through this struggle without overstepping? And maybe we just talked a little bit about that, but I think that's really good for us.
Like that.
I think that's really good for the people that have. Part of the reason I wanted to do this is because there's a statistic out about 1 in 4.
1 in 4 women will suffer from a miscarriage,
and go ahead.
And 1 in 8 couples will struggle with fertility, or it might have actually gone. It might have increased to 1 in 6 couples struggle with infertility.
That's quite a bit. And if you've asked me today, how many people? Well, maybe not today because now I know a little bit better, but. How many people do I know that have struggled with this? I'd be like, girl, not that many. Nobody I know. And the fact is that they are out there struggling. They're just silent.
Right.
It's just not given a voice to it. And so that's part of the reason I wanted to do this, is because give people the space to feel seen, feel validated, recognize that this is going on. And then also educate myself on what are the things we can say? What are the appropriate things to say to be there for someone as they're going through this journey?
So I think it's going to be so individualized, but I think the person who's going through it, I want to give them permission to ask for what they need and to kind of state how comfortable they are talking about their journey as well. There might be an initial kind of awkward period where, you're just trying to figure out what the boundaries are. But I think it's okay for a loved one to ask, how are you doing? How did your cycle go? Or, where are you all in the process? If the couple is open to it, and if they've told you that, we will be the ones to initiate information about it, then, I would just steer clear of asking them directly and would just say, hey, I'm thinking of you guys. I'm just making some extra food. I'm going to bring something by, and just be that ear. There's a lot that can, there's a lot of support that can be felt from just saying, I'm here for you to listen. You can share what is this like for you?
Yeah, that's good. Someone was talking about just have faith. And I even want to say, I'm about to make up a term. Okay, Dr. Loree, let me know if it's true. It ain't, because I just made it up. Toxic religion.
Yes.
Toxic religion?
Meaning just have faith. I believe toxic that can waste. Be weaponized, or I don't really know the right word that I'm looking for, but I don't know.
Yes.
You don't think I have faith, girl? Like, for real? I
You
think
scare me in real life.
But I feel like I would imagine feeling. I'm trying to be very empathetic and put myself in their shoes, and I would imagine.
You don't think I prayed for this?
Right,
right,
girl. You don't think I sought the Father's face?
Exactly.
Listen.
Yes, that is a very real thing. I mean, just pray about it. Just pray about it. And, and
God's timing.
We pray, God's timing. That's another thing that's not helpful. Thank you. Because we've prayed a lot. We've prayed a lot. And, we sought counsel. The couples have sought, like everybody who's in the situation has done everything right. And so that becomes another element. So please don't say that, because when also it starts to, make people question their sense of faith. And then that's a whole nother conversation that can impact the mental health piece, but also I start to kind of like, hey, let's bring in your pastor around this too, to help normalize, and help you kind of stay connected, because I do believe that religion is a very grounding and organizing element, but let's not weaponize it, as you said. Like,
absolutely be weaponized.
Yeah, like someone's not praying well enough, or doesn't have enough faith, and there's enough kind of there are enough negative messages that people are walking around with that they're not being a good Christian, or it's not that needs to happen in this at all. We need to uplift. So I think you're just safer just saying, what, I'm here for you. Or how are you? Like,
how are you allows people to answer at their level of comfort.
Exactly.
Without saying, let's talk about something that you might, because, assuming someone wants to talk about it and that they want to talk about it with you is a big assumption to begin with. You know what I mean? So saying, how are you, allows people to be like, oh, I'm good, I'm not good, or I'm good, but I don't want to talk about it. Yeah. And then respecting that answer.
And respecting that answer, being prepared for the answer and respecting it, is key. And then when they give you that information or they respond, then you kind of respond based on that, So if they give you a little bit more information, wow, that must be really hard for you. Tell me more about that if you feel comfortable.
If you feel comfortable.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, I think this was a lot of information. I hope that the impact on the people that are going through this journey is one of validation, is one of being seen. And for those of you, me, on the outside looking in, that we recognize that there is a whole silent struggle, a whole silent journey going on. And it is our, I feel a responsibility to do right by those people and offering a voice to them and standing next to them as a sense of support, as a support system. Yeah. Because it's not something that I've experienced, but that doesn't mean I can't, offer my platform as a voice.
Thank you.
Did you want to add anything else, Dr. Loree?
We definitely talked a lot about, just so many different things. And so, I'm just really appreciative of you all creating the space, because the conversations are really, are the basis for changes in behavior. We can't change what we don't know. And, we can't change what we don't know. And I just want to encourage people to lean into the discomfort. So if you're on the side of this fertility journey, lean into it. The community is here. We are here to support you. And if you have somebody who is struggling and you just don't know how, lean into that discomfort too. Don't get kind of bogged down with, oh my gosh, I need to say the right thing, or I'm going to mess up, or whatever. But how you continue to show up matters.
That's good.
That's great.
That's good. So do you offer, well, I'm sure you do, but let me not assume, but in the world of COVID, do you offer online virtual therapy sessions? Okay. Can you offer or give the people your Instagram and where they can find you if someone is interested in reaching out to you?
Absolutely. I'm on Instagram at Dr. Loree Johnson, DrLoree, and then Johnson, common spelling. Or you can look on my website, drloreejohnson.com.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for not just offering your experience as on a personal level, but also offering your expertise in the field of being a coach, a therapist in this world of infertility. So,
and thank you for soothing voiceness. It was very comforting to my soul. It's like warm cocoa on a cold winter's day.
We love it.
Thank you.
And then the last thing I want to say, if you're listening to this episode on any one of our platforms and you are 1 in 4 and you feel comfortable, say that you are 1 in 4, and let's flood those people with all of the love and the likes to let them know that we are there with them and we are supporting them and our thoughts and prayers are with them, and we're not here to
but not in the way like Republicans say after gun violence.
Well, we're not here to gaslight you,
we're
child.
not here to gaslight you.
We don't
really
want
love you.
to. We really
friends.
want to hopefully offer a voice to some of the silent pain that you may be going through.
Amen.
So thank you again so much. That's it. Make sure that you join us for next week and have a tissue handy. For the whole month, child, have a tissue handy.
And
okay.
the Love Hour conference is
and the
tomorrow.
Love Hour conference is tomorrow. Tickets are still available at thelovehour.com. That's it. That's all.
Bye.
Bye.